Welcome back to Trail Talk, the global ultra trail show. This episode is a special one all about the GPT100, the Grampian Peaks Trail Race, which is kicking off very soon in the state of Victoria in Australia. It's a Hardrock qualifier, it's part of the World Trail Major circuit, and we have some really top-class athletes. So there's a selection of interviews coming up in this episode. First off, with Joe Dorph, who is the race director. Then we also have Michael Dunstan, male course record holder, Kellie Angel, female course record holder, a hoka athlete. We also have Dan Jones on the show, a Terrex athlete. Everyone will know who Dan is. He's coming over for the stage race, which is the Miler course split over 4 days, which just looks like an amazing training stimulus, to be honest. And then we also have this year's winner at Western States in 14 hours 11 minutes, Caleb Olson. Caleb Olson is coming over to race the Miler. He's currently in the lead of the World Trail Majors series. Excited to see him come and race this very technical route in Australia. Before we get there, let's just shout out to our sponsors. Thank you to Tantrums Hydration Packs, Trail Talk 15 for the discount, or use the link in the description. X-Miles, our global nutrition partner. xmiles.co.uk is the web address, and they ship globally via FedEx. Discount link in the description as well. And also Gorewear for, cycling, training, whatever. They've got some great gear. I Run Over Mountains 30 for 30% off globally. So check them out. They support us, so please support them. And maybe last shout out, if you enjoy the podcast, drop us a review. We're going to start reading the reviews on the live show. So drop a review on Apple and Spotify. We would greatly appreciate that. No 1 stars allowed, only the 5s, baby. All right, on with the show. Joe Dorph, welcome to Trail Talk. Thanks so much for joining me for a chat about the GPT100, which is coming up in 2 weeks today. I'd love maybe for you to just introduce yourself, let the audience know your involvement with this race, and also like the origin story of this point-to-point race.
Yeah, so I'm the single track events course director for all of our events, and for GPT specifically, I'm the 100 mile race director as well. So I've kind of been involved in the GPT project from the very inception of it, I guess. Like the concept, it was a very obvious concept once they built the trail. So the Grampians Peaks Trail was finished in like November 2021, and it basically goes from the very north of the Grampians all the way to the very south. So you cross the entire mountain range in one hiking trail, and there's, I think, in the 162K, I think there's about 3K of pavement. So it's basically all just technical rocky terrain. But as soon as I heard about the trail, which was before it was finished, would have been 2020, something like that, I knew somebody was going to put a race along the whole course, like obviously. And so I mentioned it to Colin, who's the single track owner and event manager. And yeah, he's the most ambitious guy in the world. And so you only have to mention something like that to him once, and he's just like on the phone to people trying to sort it out and get it organized. And I think I only mentioned it to him in like September 2022, and he was like keen to get it on by April 2023 or whatever, and it blew out to November 2023 was the first edition. So it took him only like a year and a bit, but yeah, combined effort between like the whole team. If is the sponsor, she does a lot of sponsorship work and all the production and village vibe and event vibe. Nigel's the other race director for the stage race, so he does a lot of the dealing with the EMT groups and all that stuff. And yeah, me and Colin sort of worked on the rest of the event, the course, the specifics, the aid stations and all that. And yeah, got it together for November 2023. So it was pretty epic. And I ran the course, I ran the whole trail over 3 days in September 2022, and it was just insane. It was so beautiful, and And I said to them, I was like, as soon as we just get people on this course, it's just going to like sell itself. So we don't have to try too hard. Like the whole appeal of it is just the fact that it's just it's insanely beautiful and an incredible landscape. And I think anyone from anywhere in the world would come here and agree with that.
It seems almost perfect that the trail was created and it's that pretty much 100 mile point to point distance. It's
Yeah,
like perfect nearly.
I know. It's like one of those trails where we were kind of like, quick, we got to hurry on this because somebody's going to take this. Like somebody's going to want to do a 100-mile race along this. So, yeah, I was like surprised that we were sort of the first to get it, and now it's ours. And that was a pretty, goosebumps feeling. It's like, wow, we're going to put this event on. And yeah, the trail, it's just, you're right. It's just kind of scary that it's 100 miles on the dot. It covers the entire mountain range on the ridge line. And it's just this perfect coincidence of like a whole mountain range in one day or 2 days or whatever. And just try and get it all done in one push.
Day and a bit.
Uh, yeah. Well, probably one day is a bit ambitious, isn't it? But maybe one day.
So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that terrain. Whenever you look at the range on the map, it sort of pops out and sits on its own. And there's a a road that runs sort of to the east of it, which looks like it makes for perfect access along the way or support.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that point to point route and what sort of terrain it is. Like, is it granite? Is it sandstone? How
Yeah, a
much
lot
of
of
it is
it's
rocky compared to actual like sandy trail?
it is sandstone, the majority of it. I actually listened to a podcast on about the geology of the Grampians, and obviously it was super fascinating, and I would totally butcher it. But if you, it is the Gary Road Trail Running podcast. One of their podcasts is about the geology of the area, and it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, essentially it comes out of the volcanic plains of like Western Victoria. So they're basically dead flat around the Grampians. And then, yeah, as you're right, on the map, it's like, oh, well, there's something there. So yeah, it just comes out of nowhere, and you almost don't really notice the Grampians until you're like you're like, we're only 20 minutes away. Like, where are these things? And then you're like, all of a sudden you're there. It's pretty cool. So yeah, they're not super high mountains. The high point of the race is 11, almost 1,200 meters, which is the high point of the Grampians as well, which is, reasonably high. Like, I guess coming from Great Britain, you're probably like, oh yeah, that's pretty high. but like compared it to, New Zealand or the Alps or whatever, it's not enormous. But yeah, lots of sandstone there. Most of the route, well, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of the route is on just like hard rock. So you're not really running on dirt much. There's some sand, some dirt, but a lot of it's like you're on exposed rocky terrain, and that's what makes it so hard. A lot of concentrating, your brain's constantly working, super engaged trail, and you're probably burning a lot of energy just picking your feet and trying to stay efficient. So it's just an energy drain and super relentless. And everyone just says like your lower legs are just gonna fall to pieces because you're constantly going like this with your ankles and trying not to roll them. And yeah, but that just connects you to the trail so much more. It's just like you're fully embedded in it and engaged in it, and that's the best way to kind of really tune into the surroundings. So yeah,
Is it a like in terms of stats, it's 162, 163K. There's 7,700 meters of ascent. Is that gained over, like, is the route up, down, up, down, up, down the whole way? Or are there
yeah.
sections of it that are runnable?
There's not a lot of flat. There's definitely runnable sections. There's like three like particularly runnable like 10K sections along the route. They're all downhill. Um, and there is like a few flat Ks, but we're talking less than 10K that would be like dead flat, really. So there's no like enormous, huge climbs, but just constantly up and down. Because you're just following the spine of the the whole range essentially. You cross the spine. It's kind of like two like ridge lines at one stage in the Gramps, and you do cross over to one and come back again. But so those are two sort of flatter sections. But yeah, the rest is like you're just on the high point basically. So you got insane views and beautiful surroundings, but it's not flat. And yeah, I haven't actually counted, but there'd be a lot of climbs along the route of significant nature. The longest one would be probably about 700 meters, I'd say. So still a solid chunk. And even that one has only got a couple short downhills and it keeps going up. So yeah, the climb to Mount William, I think you end up doing 1,200 meters of climbing over like 12K basically. And there's two short downhills in that. So it's definitely the serious climb of the race. Yeah.
What part of the course is that? What distance?
Basically, once you get to Mount William, you've basically gone halfway. So
Okay.
once you're at that stage, you're near the high point and you're halfway, and it doesn't get easier, but at least you got the majority of it done, and you can just settle in. But yeah, I can't even. Yeah, I really want to run the mile, but when I'm out there course marking or hiking or whatever, I'm like, man, this would be hard. It'd be a hard race.
Oh yeah, they're not meant to be easy.
No, yeah.
So this will be the third year of the race. First year it was paused during with a storm, cold weather, thunder, lightning, that type of thing. Last year it was stopped because of excessive heat. I think I read in one report 35, 37 degrees Celsius, and the hospital was overrun with people with heat exhaustion. We're in the middle of the Australian spring. What are we going to get this year?
Hospital overrun is a bit of a media exaggeration. There was a couple people go to the hospital to get like checkups and stuff, but no major injuries and no like serious issues. It was more like the fact that so peak temps, yeah, in Halls Gate were like 36 degrees, but overnight the low was like 28. It was super hot overnight. I was out up at Mount William, which is a high point of the race, and it was like hot, and you're almost sweating up there at like 1 a.m. and people just weren't getting a break. So that was a big issue. And yeah, our medical team did an incredible job, but they were basically like, all right, we are at our limit now. Like, we've got people this far down the trail. But it was at that point where I was like, if it keeps going, we could run into problems. So they basically advised us to stop it, which was definitely fair enough. And you look at the stats, I think it was like the hottest 4 days in a row in November in the Grampians ever. Like just oppressive heat. And, Sungay getting 100 and whatever he did, 160, 150K down the range in those conditions. Like, what a beast. Like, just incredible. I think we called it at 22 hours in. He was almost at finish. And at that stage that we called it, we'd had more DNFs than we did the entirety of the first year. And that was like this 50-hour cutoff. So it's halfway into the race, really. Like we'd had actually well more. I think it was 20 more DNFs already. So people were just dropping like flies there and, making good decisions. But yeah, it didn't need to go any more than it did. And yeah, we certainly tried our best to get people to the finish, but it was pretty hard. And this year, the long range forecast anyway is looking pretty good. Hopefully, you get a lucky window. But yeah, like 36 is very hot. That's our threshold is more than 36 is basically like we do alterations or delay the start or cancel or whatever. And so we were right on the threshold of what we were actually allowed to do. And I'm happy I'm happy with the result, getting everyone that far without any major issues. But yeah, I actually myself, just as race director, had like heat stress and had to lie down for like 4 hours. So, yeah, it wasn't easy. But yeah, the first year there was a 30-minute lightning pause as well. And we had basically ran the entire 100 miles and people were slipping over. And it was probably not as bad as the weather when it's hot, but yeah, still not ideal for sure. But that's the mountains, that's the Grampians. Like it could be anything out there. And um, we'll see what we get this year, but I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic.
Yeah. What else can we be?
Yeah.
So I remember earlier on in the year, I reported on the GPT100 joining the World Trail Majors, which was great news. And I'd love to know the idea behind joining that series and what are the objectives there? What do you want to achieve from joining it?
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of the sport. So when I heard about the World Trail Majors, I was super excited. And I just love the concept of just like a bucket list of races that everyone should try and do. And it's not like an elite focus. It's like, this is like every trail runner should try and, tick these races of a lifetime off. And it just gives you like a bit of guidance. Like, there's so many races out there to do. And it's like, this is a certified list of like, these races are incredible. So like, go here and have a go. And each of the races on the list, like I always was a fan of them. There were a lot of them were part of that old Ultra Trail World
The Ultra
Tour.
Trail World Tour.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's like the probably the biggest independent races in the world, I would say, are all on that list. You got Madeira, Transgran Canaria, Hong Kong, Mount Fuji, like they're all enormous names. And I was like, I know that we're probably not big enough to get on this list, but we may as well try. I know that they would probably want more like regions of the world, so there was nowhere in Oceania. And so we tried, and we're like, you never know. Like we think our race is easily good enough to be on that list. Like it just hasn't had the history. It's only a new race. And they loved the concept of the race. They back it becoming like one of those world classics, I think it's just definitely going to be one of those sort of world A-list races, 10 years from now, because it's just got such a geologically beautiful route. It's like Grand Raid Reunion or Transgran Canaria, where you cross a whole island on a mountain race, similar kind of vibe to that. And yeah, we want GPT of all of our races. It's like, which one do we want to be like a big international draw card? And that's the one. It's like a perfect snapshot of Australia. You fly into Melbourne, like capital of cafes and, coffee and, art culture. And then drive to the Grampians and you got like kangaroos, emus, all the wildlife, beautiful, Australian terrain with just an amazing connection to country out there. And then obviously you can drive back to Melbourne via the Great Ocean Road, which is probably, Australia's most famous, road trip and incredibly beautiful coastline from the, 12 Apostles right the way through to, Torquay, which is the home of Quicksilver and, Rip Curl and stuff. So it's like surfing capital of the world. So if you were going to plan a trail running holiday, anywhere in Australia, it's just like the perfect way to experience the country. Like if you had 2 weeks to go to Australia, you'd just come to GPT for sure. Maybe you do the 50K, maybe you do the Miler, whatever. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful snapshot. And we wanted to bring that to the world. And yeah, they were pretty on board as well. So it was great to be able to get on that list. Yeah.
Then building off of the World Trail Majors, this year it's now a Hardrock Qualifier, which is big news. Like that's something that attracts the type of runner that is also gonna love the idea of a point-to-point mountain route. What was the idea behind being a Hardrock Qualifier? And is this maybe the only Hardrock Qualifier in Australia?
There is a one. No, Alpine Challenge is a 100 miler. Right near where I live, up in the high Vic Alps. That's been a hard rock qualifier for years, long time. That's been around for 20, 25 years or something. It's a one of the original kind of mountain milers in Australia. I'm actually probably the first big mountain miler in Australia. And it'll be the second one. Obviously, I don't know how much people know, but getting a hard rock qualifier is basically the hardest thing in the world. Because
It might be harder than the race itself.
Dale from Hard Rock, like they only want the hardest races. Like they're like, if it's not super hard, we don't want to give it a Hard Rock qualifier. So you look at the lists and they're all just like absolutely brutal. Like if they're not huge vert, they're like through super technical or terrain or oppressive conditions or something. And so yeah, they totally bought the idea of GPT. Like it's a lot of climbing, but it's more just the terrain that you got to cover. Like if you can finish GPT, you can do Hard Rock for sure. And yeah, I've sent them emails about other things before, and it's always just been so hard to get a confirmation or whatever. But they definitely love the idea of GPT, and so yeah, that'll be a Hard Rock qualifier this year for 2026, 2027, and then moving forward as well. So, and that's a huge thing, and it's probably a bigger thing in the US, and I think we'll actually see a lot more US runners coming out now to Australia because they're like, well, holiday in Australia, Hard Rock qualifier, World Trial Major. You ticking some boxes. And that's actually what we've seen with Caleb Olson this year. It's just ticking boxes for him. Like, World Trial Major, try him in the series. He needs a Hard Rock qualifier anyway. So he's like, perfect, get my Hard Rock qualifier. And then I have this amazing holiday in Australia. And I think even if you're not an elite, like you can still tick all those boxes. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, we've also got it's also the Australian 100-mile championship this year, the miler as well. So there's a lot of reasons to do it, I guess.
So it's going to be stacked, is what you're saying
Yeah.
this year?
Yeah, it's going to be the domestic field is super, super deep. Like we've just got a lot of really strong Australian runners coming. And then obviously some of the big international elites on top of that who it will be exciting to see. Yeah, it's going to be fun for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about that as we wrap things up. Who are the elites, the international elite runners that are registered for the miler?
Miler, yeah. So you got obviously Caleb I mentioned, who's won most of the states this year. And then Man Yi Chung, she won she's a Hong Kong lady who just won Mount Fuji 100 mile as well. So she's coming for the 100 mile. And then I should have actually got my list in front of me, but Sanjay Sherpa from Nepal, he won the miler last year. He was the guy that got the furthest on the course. Suits the Grampians really, really well, that guy. You should look up his list of racing. It's ridiculous.
I know
No
Sanjay well, and he's an absolute beast.
He is just an animal. So yeah, the race is almost too easy for him. Like that guy is just a totally different level of human.
If it was an out and back, he would have signed up for that.
Yeah, if it was a 200 miler out and back, he would for sure do it. Bridie Temple's a young Australian who I'm super excited about. She's only 19 or 20, and I think she'll she'll destroy the course. Like she's honestly, write her name down. Like she's the future of trail running in general. And yeah, we've got Luke Clifton coming. She's an all-time Australian great. Gonna take it on. So yeah, there's some deep field, and then I've actually got like 15 names in the men's field for the miler written down who could all come and win basically. So it's a deep field. Morgan Glazier actually from the UK, who you might know. Yeah, he won. He came third at South Downs 100 mile, which is another World Trial Major. So he'll be running and giving it a crack. But yeah, some good names, and then just quickly running through some of the 50K as well. So Dan Jones will run the 50K in stage race, plus Fuzhou Zhang, obviously from China. Peter Frano, who perfectly will suit that course. And Lucy Bartholomew has just signed up, which is very exciting because she's just brings the crowds and everyone loves Lucy in Australia. She's a legend. So yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah, and like in terms of Lucy, Lucy's training is just so awesome. Like every day you look at her Strava and there's not a week that doesn't go by where she's not knocking out like a 40K with a couple of 1,000 meters of vert. And the gap and average pace is like, oh, that's just so solid.
Yeah. Oh, she's just she can just cop so much big training. It's insane. And 3 back-to-back top 10s at UTMB, like that's showing how good she is. And she still
And
reckons
and
she
and
hasn't had a
getting
good
better
race.
each year as well.
Yeah, getting better, and she still reckons she hasn't had a good race there. So yeah, she'll probably win it one day. She's a legend, and she also won the Miler here last year at GPT. So she knows the terrain super well, and she's super fit, man. She just ran our other race that we have down in Melbourne, the roller coaster, and yeah, she won that with a 20-minute course record. So she's pretty fit.
Which was another just over marathon distance with
Yeah.
2,000 something meters of vert as well. So
Oh yeah, tons of 46K with 2,300, 400 meters of climbing. So heaps of and that was like 4 hours 11 minutes, 46K. So she's fit. She'll,
good training run
she'll
for
give
her.
she'll give Fujao a good run for her money. I reckon those two. It'll be fun to watch actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
How much do you think the course record is under threat this year? Course record is from Michael
Yeah,
Dunstan, right?
like with the Grampians, I think it really depends on the conditions, and I don't know how Michael's super wet, lightning delayed for 24 hours compares to like a dry 20 degrees. So yeah, we haven't got enough data. Like we kind of need 3-4 more years to actually know what a good time is. But like I think anything's possible. Yeah, I think all records are on watch. We just need to hold the event a few more times to really figure out like what is like an A-list time on the mile course, for example, for men and women. I certainly think women can go under 24 with a good run. Like Kellie ran 27 high for the record. And, for the men, I've kind of like if Caleb caught fire and had an amazing day, who knows what he can run? I really don't know. But I think under 22, I kind of told him just like maybe have your goal to be 21 and a half and just see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. He's a super world class runner. Yeah, who knows? I really don't know. I think Michael Dunstan, he's actually a super good athlete and really high performer and probably Australia's best ultra runner. So his 24 hours is probably very solid. Yeah.
And that includes the weather pause as well, right?
Yeah, so that included he was stopped on course for about 20 minutes as well, and that was included in his time because it was very messy. Some people were going forward, some people were going backwards, and we thought about adjusting times, but some people actually had to basically hurry up, get off the ridge, and continue along the course as fast as they could. And others had to turn around and go back. So trying to figure out, do you take time off some people? What do you do? So we just decided, look, it's 20 minutes. Let's just leave it as it is. So that included that. So yeah, who really knows? If it was super fine, beautiful day, and he had an amazing day, I'm sure Dunstan himself could probably run 22 and a half hours or something. So we will find out on race day. Exactly.
Look, Joe, thanks for your time, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. Michael Dunstan, welcome to Trail Talk. Excited to have you here to talk a little bit about the GPT Miler that's coming up in a couple of weeks. You have successfully run that race. You won it a couple of years ago with a 24:01 time in what was kind of we'll call it a bad weather year or a cold weather year. Why don't we kick off the interview? Just give us an introduction to yourself and some of your background.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's good to be here. And yeah, can't wait to talk about GPT. But a little bit on me is I'm 29-year-old from Western Australia, but moved over to the Blue Mountains in the last, 2.5 years. So primarily like the feel of the place and living here, but also that there's beautiful trail running here. And I kind of was introduced to trail running by one of my good musician friends, Ben Catley back home. And while traveling around Australia, I got to kind of sample all these different trails in different parts and got really into trail running kind of a little bit by accident. And one of the places I visited was the Blue Mountains, and I ended up moving here. But another one I got to play at was a local brewery called Paper Scissors Rock in Halls Gap. And the owner of that place there actually invited me to go trail running with him, and that's the first time I was introduced to the idea of trail running in the Grampians, Garryword, and also, to the idea of the event of GPT 100. It was all kind of through music. So
Well, that's actually pretty cool. And I have, I don't know much about it, but I know that you're a musician as well. Whenever I searched your name, as well as the usual bits that come up like the UTMB index, the ITRA page, it also comes up like you on Spotify as well. So let us know a little bit about your musical background and what you do musically.
yeah, so music was kind of my full-time career and passion for probably the last, like, I'd say 8 years. However, when COVID hit, touring got quite difficult, and I think that was a bit of a shift in direction where touring started to seem quite expensive and difficult during that period, or you kept cancelling tours. So that's actually when I took up running again back home in Perth in Western Australia, and it was just something to do and coincided with the time where I had a break off drinking and I just started enjoying it. And so the music side was, I guess, a massive part of my life and still is. It's got put a little bit on the back burner when the big running goals come in, but it's just a really nice way. I enjoy. I think playing acoustic guitar is one of my favorite things. So, but I think when I'm songwriting, it lets me explore and express life a little bit better. I feel like I'm a little bit more clear of a person. So, yeah, it's a big part of my life.
That's pretty cool. Like you wouldn't meet so many people in the sport or at the top end of the sport who are also artists or musically gifted. So that's fairly unique to yourself. I've followed you for a while and I've known your name, but it's probably always centered around the annual trip to Chamonix and around UTMB and like thinking about this year past, you were out with Lucy Bartholomew doing lots of the recce's and the big runs.
Yeah, Lucy helped me out massively to be able to, I guess, get over and see some of those parts of the course and give me an idea of what to expect and how to approach it. I've been wanting to head over there and race that race for quite a long time. So a lot of the things I've done in the lead up, like, even when I did GPT, it was with the long-term goal of wanting to do UTMB. So I was looking at a race in Australia that had a lot of elevation and was challenging. And so yeah, that was the first time over this year, and yeah, it was a big experience. It didn't quite go to plan, but nonetheless, it was a massive experience.
It's so hard for anything to go to plan on the first trip to the Alps. For someone that doesn't train there regularly, it's like this is the gradient here.
Yeah, it was super different to what most parts of Australia kind of feel like. So it was. I think when I got there, I was like, oh wow, like even coming a month before, month doesn't feel like long enough to really get used to this terrain, this altitude, this style of running, but give it the best shot and see how it shakes out. And then yeah, it turned out that the weather was like something I hadn't run in before, just going from like quite warm at the bottom and then up into like blizzard conditions. Like I've run in the snow before, but it was just constantly in the snow, so you could dress appropriately. So that was a big learning experience about layering. I was like, wow, this is a whole new sport altogether.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, Switching gears over onto the GPT course and that race, you've been involved at that race now. It's going into its third year. You ran it and won it in 2023. Talk a little bit maybe at the start about how that route and that point-to-point course across the Grampians compares in any way to stuff in the Alps.
Yeah, so it's actually like I think GPT100 is a lot harder than the stats suggest. Like it's its own beast. Like I did Snowdonia in Wales as well, and I would say like so something like that. It was really technical, but it felt softer underfoot. And then I think uh, compared to UTMB or something like that too, I think UTMB is a lot softer underfoot, and also like it's a different kind of technical. I think the best way to describe the GPT course is that you are predominantly on rock slab for most of the race, and that I guess over time does something different to your body than being on dirt. And a lot of the movements are not running; it's more like rock hopping, and it's all these very different movements that are quite specific to that course. So I feel like every time I visit there, I go, oh wow, like this is a different sport altogether. It feels something a lot different. I think the feeling of running through the remote areas of that national park is like hard to compare to anywhere else. It really feels like you're on the edges of the earth, and uh, I think running there feels like a pretty spiritual thing because it is so untouched, and it's just this single track going from the northern end all the way to the southern end, and there's not really any infrastructure out there. So you got this like there's not many barriers to you in the natural environment there, and there's no man-made things to really distract you. So I think it's quite a cool experience in that aspect, and that's one of the things that really drew me to the race first of all. And then I think after doing recce's of the course and things like that too, I just was like massive curiosity about how do you string this together, and like what will it feel like to put it all together in one push. Because I think even like the first day I did a recce, I got really dizzy in the heat and was like feel like it didn't make the first day really. And then we did 5 days of recce in the end, and by day 3 or 4, like the signals my body was giving me when we're running 5 hours a day, I was just like, this is like really tough. So I think yeah, it's the technicality that is really a unique thing compared to other areas. And it's predominantly another one is like how uneven the footing is for much of it. You're always trying to adapt to what the terrain's giving you, and if you try push an agenda on it, I think it really quickly lets you know that hey, you're going to blow up.
What do you think are the best ways to prepare for that type of terrain and that type of course?
Yeah, I think from my experience, I found it more beneficial to hike a lot of the sections where it might have been a runnable grade, but it was that demanding technically on your body and mentally that I felt like if you're an efficient hiker, it was really quite a smart move just to preserve like the mental strain and the strain on your body. So I think getting swift with hiking, I did use a lot of poles on the course, and I think it was very helpful. The technical downhills are a massive part. I think that's one area where, looking back, I did spend a lot of time on, I guess, technical terrain in the lead up and really heavy terrain that we have here. But in the back end of the race, that was one area where I really slowed down, was just being able to run downhill. My quads were just destroyed. And I think almost like what I did in the running training side of it was probably the best I could have done at the time with where I was as a runner. But looking back, I think strength work in the gym is a massive thing. If I went back to the race again, I would, and it's quite close to the race now, so it's a bit too late to be saying this, but I would just really double down on my ankle strength, like be doing lots and lots of different ankle exercises to get, them feeling strong and, I guess like, able to move through their range of motion too, because my ankles were one thing that, copped an absolute hammering. So it's really tricky. I'd be focusing on quite slow terrain and just becoming really durable. And I'd be doing hiking workouts as well. Like that's one similarity where I think it's translates a little bit for UTMB, but then that's like me thinking about myself as a runner. When I like visualize someone like Caleb, I'm like, maybe he would be running a lot more of those climbs at a comfortable aerobic, effort, I guess. So it's interesting like that.
But whenever you talk about these grades that you could run but feel more efficient to hike, are they maybe hard to get a rhythm running because they're varying? Like, I find that's one of the things that's I've not struggled with, but noticed coming to Australia. There's a lot of steps involved in the climbs, and even if you can run certain steep grades, you can't really run a stair climb. There's a higher tax involved in running stairs.
Yes.
What do you think in that respect?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, and it's interesting because I think like if you're doing one of the shorter races, like the 50, and you're pushing up climbs at a higher effort, like closer to tempo or something, or in tempo, all of a sudden everything starts feeling a bit more flowy, even if you're jumping over steps and things like that. But what you're saying is correct, because I feel like you're not only jumping up like little rock steps and things like that, but also side to side and things like that. Whereas I feel like, hiking might be a bit slower, but it gives you the ability to not be doing these like jarring, like jumping up and down movements or translating as high vertically, but also just be looking up and saying like, oh, hey, like I've got the time to be able to look up and actually just pick that smooth line right there. And I think picking your line in the Grampians is like such an important thing because, there's little markers, the yellow triangles, which are the Grampians Peaks Trail way markers. But in between them, you've got so many different options. So I think it's like reading the terrain, and there's often quite a smooth route to get between each of them. But I think when you're hiking, you've got an ability to really pick that out. So, but yeah, we were chatting yesterday to some friends, and I was saying how I feel like we don't talk about stairs for this race too often, but then every time I get back there, I'm kind of surprised how the rock always is somewhat in an irregular way emulating stairs.
Very Australian.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough work.
And with the fact that so much of the race is on the slick rock and hard underfoot, what's that like with the poles? I find sometimes if you're using poles on a rocky surface, it can, for a start, whenever you're going for hours and hours and hours, it can be annoying in your head just listening to the clicking of the
Yeah,
poles so much. Is it like that the whole, like, for a large percentage of the route?
yeah, it would be for sure. Definitely, yeah, poles on rock, but I think, for someone that it feels using poles is second nature, and quite comfortable with them, you wouldn't want to use poles in this race unless you felt pretty automatic and you didn't need to think about them. So when I was using poles there, I'd been using them for a long time where, I was using poles, but I wasn't actively thinking about where to put them. Like the poles were just landing in the kind of the place they are. But I think there's also plenty of good spots to put your poles. There's definitely sections where if you've wrecked it, you just wouldn't pull your poles out. But yeah, I think just mentally, like I know in the back 50Ks too, there's some seriously like steep stair climbs where the stairs are huge. And just like in the very back end of the race when I felt like the poles were my saving grace and really just mentally let me, yeah, maintain a higher pace in climbing up those than I would have had otherwise because just the sheer amount the stairs were vertically. I just thought, yeah, poles are a no-brainer.
I had sort of guessed that some of the step ups, because of just it's probably using the natural landscape, they would be uneven and probably large. So anytime I've been in the blues and I've come to steps, I've been taking like 2 and 3 at a time just to get that bigger kind of stretch on the on that through the legs. I didn't figure there'd be like these little perfectly groomed 6-inch steps.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. And, the trail there is basically all made out of the natural materials there. So they've got all these irregular different rock slabs from the surrounding area. And they do keep you guessing, and some of them are quite large, and you go like, oh, like this is cruel. Like they're like it's like a stair stepper on steroids, but just for like small sections, and then then you got like this flatter stuff. So it's like, but that's yeah, I think doing double steps on like the Blue Mountain stairs and things like that, that's super smart and will be more specific to the Grampians.
In terms of the route itself, What are the highlights for you? Like, which parts do you really like? Which do you enjoy in the recce's or highlights in the race?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's some seriously beautiful spots on that course. You will head up through a spot called the Grand Canyon, and that's just, I think, just the two sheer rock walls that you head through is just quite a beautiful experience. And then you actually pass a popular spot called the Pinnacle, which has amazing views back to Hall's Gap. I think that is beautiful, but one of my favorite parts of the whole course would be quite up high towards Rosea, and that's another peak, and it's got quite, the trail is like right on the edge, and there's massive views towards Lake Belfield, and in the distance you can also see Mount William, which you're heading up to. And I think one cool thing is that a lot of the courses up high and you can see all these little landmarks that you're going to head to. And I think it's one of the daunting parts about the race is during the day it seems like the range stretches off into like just forever. But you know that because it's unique, there's just farmland around this range, basically like flat plains. So you know that like if you can still see mountains, you've got to get to the very end of them. So I think there is an epic spot, Rosea. And I think the Mount William area, in terms of just feeling really remote, rugged, and just like it's pretty special up there. I think the views are, yeah, incredible. And then, yeah, there's so many, but I think one of the most beautiful views of the whole race, like if you do, definitely make sure to turn back and have a look. It's is looking at Signal Peak from Mount Abrupt in the southern Grampians as you're getting towards Dunkeld. You're within the last 30 kilometers of the race, and I'm sure it'll be hard going by then, but it's such a just iconic, just like pointy peak, and the trail is a magic single track through there. And yeah, it's really like trail running heaven through there. So in the recce, that was my favorite day, was that back end, the last like 35, 40 Ks. And then in the race, it was a completely different experience. I just like was in struggle street.
Which parts of the race were you when it was dark? Where were you when it was dark?
Yeah, so I was dark from Bar Huts, which is 70 kilometers in, to I think about basically as I was heading into like there's this flatter little field that you head in before crossing the road again towards, I believe it might be Griffin Fire Line or Cassidy's Gap. And basically when you cross the road again to go to the other side of the range for the last 50 Ks. So might have been a 40K stretch through there, and that was the most technical and kind of demanding of the race. And so that section's got probably the heaviest downhills of the race. I think for me that's kind of the crux of the race, is climbing up to Mount William is quite good footing and it's a long climb. So I think if you're feeling good, you can make a lot of time up. But then off the back of Mount William, there's all these really short, steep, heavy downhills that are kind of hard to see on the, I guess, like the elevation profile. But when you get there, just how they make your body feel. And they're, yeah, halfway through the race, just over halfway. And then that's really where I think the most important section is just getting through there, feeling relatively unscathed, because it's just a lot of heavy terrain.
Thinking back to your own winning race, your run there was 24:01. Where do you think there's time to shave off of that? Where do you think you could improve, but also maybe how weather would affect the route as well? Because it was a storm, there was wet rock. Last year, then it was super hot and the race was stopped early. So, like, talk a little bit also about how it would be weather affected by time.
Yeah, I think weather is one of the biggest factors you're going to face out there, honestly, because so the year we did it was quite wet, like lightly rained for a lot, and the rock was wet for much of the race. This meant it did fall. I think I remember falling 7 times, and they were all like fairly significant falls, but
No.
yeah, not enough to end the race or really like slow things up heaps. But so I think a factor of our year was that it was cold, so it was really good aerobic conditions. So I remember everyone saying like, "Oh, it was a horrible year," and you did like, you guys did these times, and what if you had a good year? And I was like, it was actually really, really good conditions to actually move at a higher intensity. I remember going off the start line and being like, wow, like it's cold today. Like my heart rate's like staying down for a good effort. So I think that was a positive. And then, however, I think maybe in the back half of like the quads feeling so destroyed is kind of when the rock was as wet as it was, and I was falling a lot that year. It was that I think I just the stabilizing and just, not fully being able to just let go, and it just felt like you could put your foot down like 10 times and not question the rock, and then there's be the same rock and it would look no different, and then your foot would completely slide out from underneath you. So it was hard to trust it. So I think then you run a little bit more hesitant, and potentially that's what could have caused like the legs to feel really rough in the end, is just never being super sure-footed or just relaxed. I think a lot of the time in my run then that could have been a lot better is the last 50Ks for sure. I wouldn't go out quicker at the start. If anything, I think you could even go out a bit slower. But I think, apart from having a delay from just the lightning on the way up to Mount William, like I think moving up to Mount William, which is about 80, potentially 85 Ks in the race, like I was up until there, I think I wouldn't have changed too much. And then it's just, I think, all the time in the back end where if you had more legs to run the runnable sections in that back 50Ks, and that's always been a question in my mind, is like, is it just the nature of the rock and the Grampians that by the time you get back there from running hard for the rest of the race, that it's just really tricky? Or is it was my first miler, didn't have the muscular endurance. And so I think there's like, there's a lot of time out on that course to be made still. Heat, it's interesting hearing people like look at time splits from our year to previous years. Like I was mortified that people were talking about time when it was going to be like mid to high 30s last year. I was like, oh, like just thinking of how it would have felt in our race if we had that temperature. And I was like, wow, we'd be probably pretty happy to finish under 30 hours. Like the rock just radiates so much. So, and then even talking to my friend just the other day who went out and checked out some of the new parts that have been affected by some of the fires from last year. And he said it's a lot more exposed than usual. So there's new factors like that as well. I think they are parts where you'd be likely to go through at the night. But yeah, I think weather's a huge factor. But yeah, I think if I was to do it again, I wouldn't change the pacing too much at the start. I'd just be hoping that over the years I become a more durable athlete and try to preserve my legs a little bit more for the back 50. Because I think in between those peaks and things, there's some beautiful running. It's just whether you can make the most of it by the time you get there. And that's a part I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I guess whenever it's hot, the rock does just gradually heat up. And then if it's wet, the rock is slipperier. So yeah, it's probably a course that's more rain affected than most.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's really can get challenging in spots to run there when it's wet. I think all the downhills can get pretty slippery pretty quick. But even, I've had thoughts sometimes where I'm like, maybe the fact that it was wet held me back on the downhills and actually ended up being the thing that got me to the finish line better. I think a really dangerous thing about this race is that if you feel you are really fit and you can move aerobically at a certain level, I just don't know if it means you should, with just like how much, as soon as you start going quicker out there, the rock's just coming back at you quicker. Like it's really like, when I think about the Grampians, I just think about ground reaction forces. Whereas like other places, I just don't even think about that, And I think on other courses, I just think about targeting a certain heart rate, and it's not much more than that. Whereas there, I'm like, in certain sections or the downhills or something, I'm just like, it's more about preservation of your body than trying to milk like where your fitness is at. And I think it's really unique in that aspect. It's quite a interesting thing. And I think people will do well by just running to their sensations and also to the day they're given at hand. And I think that's the best probably thing I reflect back on is I was never ever thinking about time, because when I did the recce, I was just like, oh, it's just going to be a miracle to finish this thing, just because it, A, first miler, B, just felt so long in the recce. Like it felt like such a journey, and it was all this different terrain that I think, yeah, the quickest version of you that'll get to that finish line is the one that just respects that place, because it is really like, it has so much to it and so many different sections, and the weather and hot rock and then the wet rock. And so, yeah, it's just being clever, I think.
I'm just looking at the time, and honestly, although these were meant to be short interviews to piece together for a GPT special, I could probably talk to you all day about this course. Two things I want to cover before we do hit stop is, given that this was your first miler, am I right in thinking your next miler was Ultra Trail Snowdonia? It's like 6-7 months later.
Yes, that's correct.
And you podiumed at that race, which is, like, everyone would say, like, the UTS 100 miler is probably harder than UTMB. You know, it's a hard course. What did you take from GPT forward into your second miler to end up podium at such a hard race?
I think, yeah, for me, I definitely applied a similar way of training. I think I was spending a lot of easy intensity hours on just really challenging terrain, and just, yeah, having good results in watching my body just slowly get fitter and faster on these types of terrain. Like, I mean, for Snowdonia, for example, I was doing, so you would be familiar with like Eastern Solitary here, that climb, and I was just like doing like up and downs of that and gradually getting stronger. But I think the biggest difference between those two races I found was that the steepness of Wales was a lot different. Like, it was quite like, you get onto a climb and it was almost, the word that comes to mind is a bit oppressive, like in terms of, you hit these massive grass filled walls that are just really steep, and you don't have that steepness in GPT to that same level. But it was so much softer underfoot at Wales. You're running through bogs and all these different things. And at the back end of that race, I was able to, like, I remember the last 5Ks, I thought someone was right behind me. So I was having a ascend down the last downhill. And I remember doing a kilometer that was like, shocked me. I was like, it made me think, is there more in the tank? And how come I can run like this now? Whereas at Grampians, I couldn't run at the end, like, properly. And so they challenged me in different ways. I think mentally, Snowdonia challenged me a lot more, and was physically, I mean, mentally, I suffered a lot more at Snowdonia. And I think maybe that had to do with the race intensity being up a little bit higher for a lot longer. So that's one thing I learned at Gramps, is like, okay, like, this aerobic level is sustainable. What if I did a tiny bit more? But then the physical sensations I had at GPT were a lot more intense than I had at Snowdonia, simply from, I personally think, from being on the rock for so long, from the impact of it. And I wore the same shoes, and I was arguably, yeah, more durable by the time I'd got to Snowdonia. But they feel like such different races, which is really cool. So yeah, I think technically GPT is harder race than Snowdonia, and harder on the body. And then I think in terms of aerobically, I think Snowdonia is more demanding, because the climbing is, some of those climbs out there, particularly in the back end of the race, are like, I hadn't seen the whole course, so I was pretty blind. So and I just felt like it kept going up in the night, and I'd see like little markers, and I thought there were stars. So I was like, oh, there's stars. I'm like, oh no, we're going up there. Jeez. So yeah.
Yeah, it's those, whenever you look ahead and you see head torches and markers and things, you have to always try and remember, no, we're just in this kilometer right now, but it's so hard to center yourself back to that whenever you're in the thick of it.
And that's a good note, because I think, looking at like life stress around both of the races, I think mentally, and I was in a better spot for GPT, and I felt a lot more present during the race. And like, I was breath counting, and I felt like no matter how intense things got, I was able to kind of just remain with the breath and be present. Whereas Snowdonia, I feel like I had a lot of things going on beforehand, and people helped me to get over there, and I felt a little bit of weight to like not squander an opportunity to do well, because it's a long way to travel and you don't want to waste resources and other people's resources. And then I remember, not feeling as switched on mentally, and for long periods of the race where I just was in the gutter mentally, but purely just from just from a presence perspective. So I think, and a race like GPT, like a lot of it is just getting through that terrain without drifting mentally too much that you roll an ankle or something like that. It's like we always talk about, I've been talking about how technical it is and on the body and things like that too, but like a massive part of the race is just actually being patient and being present with where you are so that you don't make a silly mistake.
Yeah, that's everyone I've speak to about this course is stressing how hard it is on the ankles and the lower limbs, and coming off a double ankle roll at UTA Miler, I'm thinking maybe this is the first time I should tape my ankles. Maybe I'll go for a bit of tape this time.
Yeah, taping the ankles presents its own difficulties too, but because it's like if you tape it wrong and it rubs. Because I also think this is like last year I was filming at Halls Gap, which is the 50-kilometer spot, and some people's races were already over from blisters there. And that's because when it's dry, the rock is so grippy, but it's so like off camber that, your shoe, if it's good grip, it will stay there. But like if it's hot and your feet are sweaty, like every time you put your foot down, your foot slides in your shoe. And so some people there were like getting up and like hobbling out of 50K aid station being like, my feet, like my blisters are so bad. And so it's like my advice would be like, take care of your feet and take care of your ankles in whatever way that is going to be best for you. And maybe, have you done long runs with your ankles taped recently, or?
I haven't, but I think if you can do a 2-hour run with your ankles taped and there's a lot of running involved in it, then you're probably fine. And I'm not really a blister guy, but what you're saying, like, it is so important to make sure that your shoes are always adequately tight, because it was nothing to do with technical terrain why I rolled the ankle at UTA. It was a combination of being lazy about retightening wet shoes, so they're already loose, and then it goes over and the ankle rolls off the shoe, game over. So I do always make sure that the shoes are tight now, because I can't afford another roll on an ankle that is probably not back to full strength yet, but like it wouldn't want to sustain another roll.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I rolled my ankle the other day.
I mean, normally it's no big deal. It's just part of trail running, and you walk it off, you run it off, and it's no big deal. But in UTA, I rolled it really early. I didn't retighten the shoe, and I rolled it again like a K and a half later, and then I ran for 40K on it. So
Wow.
I give it a doozy.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Michael. I want to know what shoes you wore for the 2023 race.
Yeah, I wore the Hoka Mafate Speed 4s in that race.
Okay.
And my reasoning behind it felt like they were grippy enough on that rock, like they had good lug depth. They also they're more cushioned, I guess, than probably some of the shoes I run in. But I think on the rock there, it was a good balance of cushion, but also having some sort of ground feel. And then, I didn't really have many issues with the shoe choice at all. I think like in hindsight, I would race like that race in that shoe again. I've recently been back and I'd run in like a Prodigio Pro, for example, and I feel like that feels like a good shoe for that race too. So something cushioned with good lug depth. That feels like your foot's not going to move around too much, like a good kind of technical shoe.
Yeah, La Sportiva shoe is probably a good shout, considering the sort of terrain that they design their shoes for is usually more rocky than anything else.
Yeah, I think, the key difference between the two is I feel like maybe like where your brain senses your foot is in the Prodigio Pro. Like the footprint of the shoe is a bit more under your foot. So I think I spend less time thinking about where I'm putting my foot and trust more in that shoe. But in terms of like cushion and grip, they both kind of feel like they're a good level of cushion and grip.
All right, Michael, thanks for your time. We will leave it there, and I will see you in Hall's Gap, I suppose, quite soon.
Yeah, I'll be down there soon. So looking forward to seeing you there.
Kellie Angel, welcome to Trail Talk. Thanks for joining me for this GPT100 special. You have experience with that course. You've won that race. Why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know where you are, and let's get straight into GPT talk thereafter.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I am Kellie. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I won the inaugural GPT100 back in 2023. I'm a Hoka runner, and I'm also a mum, as you can see some little monkeys in the background. I'm most recently just come off the back of World Champs.
Okay. And any plans to return to GPT now that it's part of the World Trail Majors and a Hardrock qualifier?
I would love to. I did go back last year in the stage race relay, and that was really, really fun. Really enjoyed it. I'm not going to make it there this year. It's been a little bit too big. There's been a lot of travel. So I won't make it there this year, but I do want to do it again in nicer weather. But if we can't predict that, so we will see when that happens.
So let's get straight into it then. Like the year that you ran it, the first year, there was a weather pause during the race. Bad weather came into the mountains. It was stopped for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes or something like that. Talk about the route itself, and also, like, have you experienced it when it wasn't wet and stormy? Like, talk a little bit about the route and the weather, how the weather might impact it.
Yeah, sure. So, look, the Grampians or Garroward is an amazing, unique place. It's beautiful. It's primarily rock, so there's a lot of rock that you run on and a lot of stairs. I have spent a lot of time out there over the years running trail camps. I got married out there, so it's a pretty special place to me. And so when the race came up, I had to be part of the inaugural one. And I had experienced it in all sorts of weather, so I knew sort of what I was in for, but 28 hours of rain was probably not ideal. It did mean that you had to take your time. You had to take those few extra seconds to make smart decisions so that you didn't fall over. And in those first, 20K, there were blokes all around me, slipping and tripping, and because they were just going a little bit beyond their abilities and with their knowledge of the terrain. And I was pretty happy that I made those smart decisions and I didn't fall over once. We did get stopped for lightning protocol, heading up towards one of the hardest sections of the course. They said, get off the ridgeline, and we're on an exposed rock slab with not really anywhere to go. So, it was a bit, we weren't really sure what to do at the time. We sort of just tried to hang low and wait it out until we were given the go-ahead to keep going.
And what is that surface like in the wet? It's sandstone, so does it absorb the rain? Does it create rivers over the course, or what's your experience with that?
Yeah, look, it's a little bit more slippery for sure. One of my pacers had an epic slip and somehow landed in a plank position without actually hurting himself. That was amazing. But overall, I think the rock is pretty grippy. Once you work out how it works and you know how to read it, you just go with the green is mean and stay away from that part. It's not too bad. Yeah. But if you've never been out there before, it is a little bit more challenging.
So you're a Hoka athlete. So what was the shoe choice, and did you have any swaps during the race?
Yeah, so I wore the Speed Goats. I think at the time it was the Speed Goat 6. They've always been a really great all-rounder shoe for me, and I knew that I would be confident with the grip. And so they worked really well. I ended up changing them earlier than I had planned, just because my feet were so wet. We all had trench foot by the time we'd finished. They'd been wet for 28 hours straight. So the pictures of everyone's feet are quite disgusting.
So you just changed straight into a fresh pair of Speedgoat?
Yeah. I did, yeah.
Okay, and is that your your normal go-to, or was it terrain specific that you didn't choose like the Tecton?
Yeah, look, I really want to love the Tecton, but they're just a little bit too wide for my feet, so I don't trust them on the technical terrain so much. So for me, the Speedgoats I have full confidence in, and yeah, that's my go-to. Now, potentially, you could probably get away with wearing the Rocket Trails, maybe. I mean, everyone's individual, so it really depends. Sometimes there's another race on the course called Wonderland, and I remember the race director used to suggest that people wear road shoes sometimes too, just because it's a bit more flatter and will actually connect with the rock. But for me, the Speedgoats are a good choice.
What would you consider like the hardest parts of that point-to-point route?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is after Burrow Huts, which is I'm going to say 60 or 70k, I can't remember now, heading up towards Mount William car park. I remember doing a recce on that part of the course and telling my husband that he'd have to pick me up in about 2 hours. And I think I got to 2.5 hours and I could see Mount William in the distance and I was absolutely nowhere near it. I had to call him saying, I'm going to be a few more hours. Yeah, you head up on this sort of douche grade rock slab, and you've already got 60 k's in the leg, so you're a little bit fatigued already. So stuff that you would normally probably run, you're fighting with yourself to keep running, and then you start getting up to 7 Dials and all this much more technical section where there's a lot more stairs. You have to, climb certain bits up rock slabs and squeeze yourself through little gaps. And then when you finally get on something a bit more flatter, there's just lots of rocks and things around. So I think that part is the harder section. You also, when we did it, we also did that section in the night, and the visibility was probably less than a meter, and there's cliff edges all around you, so we had to be really smart, and I was really happy to have a pacer there to lead the way, mostly for safety. And in the end we had a conga line of at least 5 athletes behind me that were using the safety of that as well. But they have changed the start times now, so I believe that part of the course will be a lot later or earlier in the morning potentially.
What's the change in the start time?
I can't remember what it is now. Can't remember if it was. Trying to think. I feel like we started at like 11 a.m. or midday, and I think it must be a lot earlier now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I had thought that it was around a midday start, but I think it's now a morning start. So initially it was midday, right? Okay. And so do you think that was like the crux of the course because of timing, because of fatigue, or technicality?
Probably everything, because yes, it's the hardest. I think it's the hardest part of the course, but you're also going to it fatigued, and also it was nighttime and no visibility, and we got the lightning, so it was like wham, all in one. And I had some friends who actually hadn't planned on having a pacer until they got to Mount William car park, but their crew changed that up and threw someone in there because there was just so much going on, and that really helped them. Yeah.
Talking on the pacer side, like that's as a European, I would think of that as like an American thing.
Yeah.
What was it like having a pacer for that run? Did you have experience of pacers prior to that? I'm certainly going into the race in 2 weeks with no pacer. I think pacer would be someone else to worry about.
Yeah. Look, it was the first time that I'd ever had a pacer. So I'd never run one before, and I didn't really know what to expect. And I'd set up 3 different people to help me. And it was great. The first guy in particular was just really good, and it was the right person to have when there was a lot going on with lightning and safety and stuff. So he was really good in looking after me. The next guy thought he was going to be out for 3 hours for 30K and ended up spending the entire night with me because it was a lot slower than he realized. So, yeah, that was interesting for him. And then I had a good friend finish it off with me, and I didn't have to rely on caffeine or anything. Like, I never felt tired through that race because I was talking to people the whole time, and I found it really beneficial.
Where do you think, as we wrap things up here, where do you think there's time left on that route for you personally? Running 28 hours, 18 minutes, where do you think you could shave time off that?
I think I'm confident that a woman can do it in under 24 hours. I think that had the variables been a bit more controlled, I reckon I could have got a lot closer to that. I think the first 50K is actually quite fast, and I think I came in the top. I would have got a podium for the 50K within the 100 miler when I did it. So I think that it's the back half for sure is where I remember just thinking it was just so slow, and yeah, I think I could fuel better, and I definitely think you could take a few hours off in that back half.
And how do you think weather affects the speed of that course?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, whether it was rain or the heat last year, I don't know what is worse. Probably the heat is probably worse. But yeah, it's just you need to, if it's hot, you need to keep yourself cool. The way that the heat reflects off the rock, the heat is tenfold. So you really need to be conscious of that, and get ice and use all your cooling strategies when you can. If it's pouring with rain like it was, like I said, you just need to make smart decisions and not fall over and take that a bit of extra time to stay on your feet.
All right. Look, I hear the children in the background, so I think it might be time to wrap things up. We've got through our list of questions, but great to chat with you, Kellie, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks so much for having me, and good luck for the race.
Dan Jones, welcome back to Trail Talk. A repeat guest, always great to chat to you. And this week it's part of a GPT special because you have signed up for the stage race, which for the audience, that is 4 back-to-back days of between 33 and 49 Ks, each of them between like 15 and 2,300 meters of vert. So like 4 really good runs, let's say. So why don't we start it off by saying, hello, welcome back. How's your summer been and how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, it's great to be back and really appreciate the time to have a bit of a yarn around GPT. But I am, it's been a couple months now since UTMB where I DNF'd, and I had a bit of downtime after that. I basically used it as an off season, even though I probably didn't ruin the body as much as I would have if I made it around the full loop. So no, it was good. Like, I want to say it was good having a bit of a rest, but I pretty much got sick right on getting back to New Zealand. We came back to the New Zealand winter. It's pretty cold. A lot of the body was pretty run down. Immune systems were low anyway. And coming off that big flight back to New Zealand, I got pretty sick, and it took a long time to shake it. So I've only just really started to get back into some decent training. And I thought, well, this is looking towards GPT. It's a good motivator, and it's a good way to, get a few more kilometers under the belt and, really set myself up for a new season ahead. So that's what I'm targeting right now.
So GPT, it's going into its 3rd year. I've had multiple interviews on this actual GPT special, but it's a point-to-point race. The route itself is like 130 or 63 kilometers. And the stage race is really unique. Like, we would not see it very often, where this miler is essentially broken up into four pieces. All big days. I would say all bigger days than I'm used to seeing you do. Like, if I look at your results, I haven't seen anything like this in that results history. Like, what is the thought behind tackling these 4 big back-to-backs?
Do you mean my training or do you mean like results in general? What do you mean there?
I mean, yeah, like if you look back at what you would have been racing this time last year or the year before, this is something new.
Yeah, true. Like I suppose at this stage of the season, it is. I mean, last year I raced a couple shorter distance races, racing at Cappadocia and UTCT, the 5K. So for sure, it's going to be a big week, and I'm under no illusion that it's going to be easy or even that I'm not going to get beaten up from it. But I I have been to the Grampians National Park once before, back when I was doing multi-sport. So that included like a trail run, a mountain bike, and a kayak actually in the park on a lake in there somewhere. And I'll be interested to see if it's around that similar area that will be racing some of the 100-mile course. But yeah, when I was there last time, and it's just such a beautiful area, I'm pretty excited to get back, and I just saw it as it being like a nice. First of all, we've actually just had a baby, a Michelle and I, Adelaide. So Hudson is now like 5 weeks old. It's a nice race to get to where I don't have to travel across the other side of the world. I can shoot away for 5-6 days and just be a part of it, like such a cool community. And it's a fair, as you said, it's a fairly new race, and kind of just keen to dip the toes in at this time of year in a race that's not in New Zealand, like still travel to Australia, get it done, and get a really good stimulus, including not just the training side of things, but hopefully just a really good experience for the racing side of things again, and have a good time of it, really.
It's doing it as a stage. It's a great way to recce the miler route. Any thoughts at maybe giving the miler a crack at some point?
Yeah, that's true. And I would say I'm also wrecking it, not just for myself, but for other athletes that have come to me for coaching advice as well, because it's really good to know these kind of courses, and it's an ever-growing event. So, I've had an athlete do it last year, the 100-mile last year. Obviously, last year it was you probably talked about it as well, but it was cancelled halfway through due to the heat. So for me, actually getting to do all 4 stages, which go over the complete miler course, it's a really good learning experience as well, not only for me but for the athletes that I coach. Whether I jump up and do the whole 100-miler in one go in the future, yet to be seen, and it kind of just is determined by the racing calendar that I set up for myself. I don't try and take on too many 100-milers throughout the year, maybe 1 or 2. So we'll see where it fits in there in the future.
It's a World Trail Majors event, and I think that's maybe some of the reasons why Caleb Olson is coming over. It's also a Hardrock qualifier, which those people who aspire for a Hardrock start have to tick off every couple of years. Do any of those things interest you now or in future?
Yeah, I was so stoked to see them get that, because from all accounts I've heard that this course, the GPT100 Miler course, is spectacular, but it's very technical, and I think it aligns really well to suiting those kind of qualifying events. So for sure, like at the moment, I'm still quite keen on the runnable, fast stuff. I feel like I've got a lot left in the legs to compete and participate at the highest level in some of these fast runnable races. And I'm sure in the future there might become a time where I cross over to a bit more mountainous stuff, and I think that's where I'll be full focus on UTMB and maybe a race like Hardrock, which I've heard and see such amazing things, and just the level like that you can compete at. Well, I don't know, Ludo is just an absolute freak, but when you see him coming around and just getting a race record at the age of 49, 50, it's just, and unreal, and something to aspire to, something that I, truly like look at and be like, well, I've got years in the sport left. I don't need to shift my focus from the fast stuff to the ultra mountainous stuff just yet, but there is that scope when the time comes.
Yeah, Ludo, what an inspiration. So you've had an athlete compete at the race before. Obviously, as you mentioned, it was stopped last year. It was like 35 37 degrees in the midday, so it was super hot. Weather isn't shaping up to be that bad or extreme this year, but it is starting to trend hotter. I'm saying thankfully, because it's kind of a little bit cold here in Sydney today. First day I've worn a coat since spring came. Have you learnt from the athlete that was there last year that's maybe impacted or directed some of your training?
Yeah, I'm a good mate with this guy as well. So yeah, we've had some good catch ups around it, and it's very hard here in the spring to really replicate anything that's even close to what the Grampians is. And I think that's what excites me as well. It's like, you do everything you can, and you're not just using the experience of the last couple of months, but you're using the experience that you've gained over your whole lifetime of running to hopefully prepare you somewhat. And obviously this year one of my big concentrations was Western States, and you get the heat training from that. I'm hoping I've still got some kind of capacity to handle the heat, which, as you say, it's going to be hot, but it might not be to the same extremes as it was last year. And so I'll use that. I've been doing some sauna work to build up to this year. And in terms of the technical running, there's not too much like what I'll be experiencing over in the Grampians. But yeah, just trying to get some time on the hills, doing a bit of vert training. And I think it's a good time for me now to be working on the hill stuff, because then I can kind of cross over, tick that off, and then get into some more speed stuff as I lead into, say, Tarawera, and then my big goal of Western States for next year.
Yep, you're always you're like, it's almost like you flew under the radar a couple of years ago at States. You come back this year and ran near enough the exact same time on another super competitive year. So like it'd be exciting to see you going back again.
Yeah, so I'll be coming back for a fourth time, and as you say, like I had a big jump from my debut to my second year, and last year was like quite a similar time to my second time around. I mean, sorry, this year. And yeah, obviously I just want to improve. I want to keep grinding away. I was happy with my time in my race this year, but I wasn't completely stoked on it. Like, yeah, I put in the big effort, but I just didn't feel like I quite had it on the day. And, sometimes it happens, and it's when those days happen, you grind it out and you make it work for yourself in whatever capacity that is. And yeah, hopefully this year I get a good build in and I can improve on those past performances.
Yeah, for sure. You come back with another year's experience, regardless of anything else. All right, Dan. Thanks so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you next week in Halls Gap.
Yeah, it's going to be such a good time. I just can't wait to catch up with everyone over there. So see you there, mate.
Caleb Olson, welcome to Trail Talk. First time on the show, so really happy to have you here for part of this Grampian Peaks Trail 100 special. You're on transit over to Australia right now. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, like you said, I am in the airport right now in LA, en route from Salt Lake over to Melbourne, and I'm excited to get out there. I've been, feeling good. It's been kind of like a weird recovery time between I messed up my knee at Worlds after falling and smashing it on a rock, and that took a couple of weeks to start feeling like I could really train again on it, but it came around just in time, I think, and hoping that it can hold up for 100 miles.
You've had, I mean, you've just been killing it for the past year and a half, more. An amazing run at States, 14:11, super fast. And then going into the summer, you decided to go self-coached. So kind of would love to know a little bit about maybe how you went about training for Worlds under your own kind of guidance.
Yeah, let's see. After Western States, I think Western States just takes a lot out of everyone, but especially me. It's like really draining to I felt like I was just grinding in the heat every day, like running a lot by myself, usually in the middle of the day. And I didn't have that many friends who could get out and run with me then. So it was just kind of exhausting, and it paid off, and I don't regret anything. But after Western States, I really wanted like a big change, wanted to take a step back and kind of go back to what I enjoy most about running, which is like less actual running and more like I think of it as just playing in the mountains, like big days out, hiking around, getting up in the alpine and tagging some peaks. And I was able to do that. Less structure kind of meant more like mental freedom to just go off of whatever I felt like doing each day. And I do think that you maybe sacrifice a little bit of performance in that, but I think what you gain in mental freshness and excitement about the sport makes up for what you might not get physically. And I also think physically I was able to train pretty well. I ended up going out to Europe about 6 weeks or so before Worlds and did a lot of training in Chamonix and a small town called Aresh, and then out on the course in Spain. So I felt like my training was really specific for it. I was doing big verti weeks on technical terrain, and I was feeling really good. And then I felt ready for the race, but mile 6, had to call it a day, basically. Ended up walking to about 14 miles total and then dropping out. So ended up with kind of all this energy that I still felt physically fresh and ready to race and excited. Just the knee was a problem. So kind of then turned the gaze to like think about what's next and see if I can roll all the fitness towards one final race to end out the year. That's where GPT100.
Mile 6? Oh man, that's got to be
It was so quick.
tough to deal with.
I know. It was so bad. It was like early enough in the race that when it happened, like my first thought was, I tried to walk it off. I took a minute to see if it was just like maybe just the initial shock was worse than the actual injury. And after like a minute of walking and seeing if it would loosen up, I was like checking my watch thinking, is it going to make sense to drop out at the next aid station or should I just turn around and walk back to the start line and call it a day there? And ended up wanting to see if it would loosen up after the first uphill and then the big downhill, and it didn't. So yeah, it was early. That was a bummer.
I can sympathize with you. The regular viewers will know that I have never pulled out of a race from injury, but I rolled my ankle 8K, so 5 miles into Ultra Trail Australia Miler.
But then you still finished?
No, but
okay.
I limped through to nearly 50K because I thought I'm pretty close to splits. Maybe I just keep it going here.
Yeah.
Which was a ridiculous idea. So you did the perfect thing, and you can recover and get back into some training for the GPT trail. Is there anything that you've thought about training wise for the GPT that you've added in recently or in the last sort of month or so?
I think the main thing is just I keep hearing how like rocky and technical and just sort of brutal and slow the terrain is. So I think I had like the fitness base from Worlds. It wasn't specific to 100-mile training. Like if I was training for GPT this entire time, I probably would have been doing higher mileage, but I had high volume, lots of vert. And I think that strength translates over, even though it maybe wasn't like huge mileage. Since I've known that I'm doing this GPT 100 race, I have mostly just been focused on like slowing things down even more and picking technical rocky routes to just work on getting in that flow so I don't trip on a rock again early in the race and have to call it. I'm just getting my confidence back sort of and trying to feel smooth on tough terrain.
I've heard you say several times about the type of stuff that you like and that high alpine technical kind of running. Would you say that that's also what you're best at?
I think I'm good at it. I don't think I've proven that I'm good at it, like to the ultra running world. When I'm with my friends, I feel like I can move relatively really well on it. But yeah, so far that hasn't actually shown itself in a race yet. I haven't put myself in tons of positions where I could show it in a race, but the ones where I have just not gone as I hoped. So that's actually part of why I know we might get into this more, but part of the reason why I'm doing GPT-100 is I still have this desire to prove to myself, and I guess to everybody who cares and watches, but mostly to myself, that I can have success on a harder, longer race that is more mountainous than a lot of the races like Western states where I've kind of found myself having success recently.
The area that you train in Utah in the Wasatch, how does that compare technically to like the Alps or the Pyrenees or what you experienced in Europe?
Yeah, I'd say overall less technical and less steep in the Wasatch, but not by much. And if you're intentional, you can definitely find really technical, really steep terrain. So probably the most popular trails tend to be less technical and less steep. But Actually, in terms of technicality, I'd say it's similar to the Alps, probably less technical than the Pyrenees. And then I do think it's a great place where you can find whatever you need. You can train just as well for Western States there as you could for UCMB. And I think people can have and have had success training in the Wasatch for both of those races. So you get a wide variety of terrain. Overall, it's great. I love the Wasatch.
Yeah, you probably couldn't say in the Alps you would have the great training ground for Western States. So it's nice to have the
Probably not.
variety.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know some people who live in Chamonix who have trained for Western States, and it sounds tough. A lot of road running and running on that river path.
Yeah, it gets boring pretty quickly looking for flat stuff in Chamonix. So the Grampian Peaks Trail this year announced as part of the World Trail Majors. You, of course, have already got a win in the World Trail Majors from Transgran Canaria earlier in the year. Is that part of the motivation for the GPT to come and get potentially a second, I think it's 1,500 points you get for a win, and that would essentially secure that title?
Definitely. Yeah. There are a lot of factors that are going into it, but that's one of them. Um, I mean, I think pretty much all of the World Trail Majors, definitely all the World Trail Majors that I've been to, but also all the ones that I'm considering going to, all seem like really special, unique, beautiful races that are part of that series for a good reason and have earned their place there. So, I mean, they're all worth doing for their own sake. But I do also think like being part of kind of this prestigious series brings more competition. It brings prize money. It has these different motivators that are drawing me out there. And yeah, I would be lying if I said that part of the reason I was going out there was not to try and go for the series win.
Yeah, it's so true what you say about that series, that all of the races are iconic in their own way. It's, it's 2.0 of the Ultra Trail World Tour, which was a bucket list of races for many people. The race is also now a Hardrock qualifier. So you're going to hopefully, potentially, tick the box of getting your qualifier for Hardrock. Where does that sit on your list of to-dos?
Pretty high, yeah. You're nailing all the reasons right now, but yeah, Hardrock Qualifier is one. I have definitely had that on my mind, and I would love to line up at Hardrock. I have this pretty specific kind of plan of when I would like to do Hardrock, and if I had everything go exactly my way, I would love to do it in 2027. I think I want like a little more experience at that hard mountain 100-mile distance before I go do Hardrock. But I would love to do that someday, and getting a qualifier now means that I can put my name in the lottery and start getting tickets and hopefully make that happen fairly soon.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast for this GPT special. Safe travels, and I will see you very soon in Holscap.